Hi, everybody. It's your girl, Anne-Marie Martinez, host of Anne-Marie Inc. TV. The intention behind my channel is to bring you all of the tools and resources that I believe could potentially help you to become a better version of yourself. Today's guest is Aziz Mulay Shah, former diplomat, the CEO of Global Communications Agency in Dubai. He is also working on a very important project that he'll share with us today called Happiness Matters. He's a dear friend, and I'm so excited to share him with you all. Welcome, Aziz Mulay Shah.
Hi, Anne-Marie, and thank you so very much for giving me the opportunity to be on Anne-Marie Inc. Live. It's a real pleasure to be here with your guests, both on Instagram and here on Zoom. And I'm really honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to talk a little bit today about, the work that I'm doing here in Dubai and a little bit about my background. So, you can ask any question you want and just let me know. But what I will start off by saying is that, I was a diplomat first. I had an international calling when I was a child because my parents used to take me around the world traveling, and it really inspired me to want to do something with an international focus. And so, after my studies, I studied international affairs. And after that, I was lucky enough to be selected as one of Canada's diplomats with the chance to really work around the world. And, the focus of my work really started out on a concept called human security that the government of Canada, including myself, we came up with in the late 1990s. And really, human security was about a concept that looks at how you can really make a difference in the lives of everyday people following conflict, right? And the idea was that instead of, diplomacy to stop wars, it was about diplomacy and sustainable development programming that would really rebuild societies after the horrors of war. And so these were things like, how do you give people access to water? What are the requirements in terms of education? How do you rebuild an economy? How do you look at the concept of gender rights? And what does that mean in the concept of peace and security? So these were really important issues, and it hooked me. I really got thrilled and excited about working on these issues. And so those...
If I may interject for a moment, what I love about my time with Aziz, is a very dear friend of mine, which I didn't say at the beginning of this. Spent a lot of time together in Dubai. He gave me the opportunity to speak with the students at the Canadian University of Dubai, where I got to speak on ethics and integrity and PR and media. He just really was such a dear friend and mentor, where I got to expand my horizon and really open up my mind about the things that I thought I could potentially do to be active and to take action when wanting to show up and be socially responsible. And what I found is that between politics and your average Joe, someone like me who doesn't really know anything about politics, Aziz had the ability to articulate and communicate a message to me that I could understand, digest, and process. And I think that that's really important. I think that today more than ever, with the current social climate, how do we get ourselves informed in a responsible manner without over consuming, but also be responsible and take action within ourselves, our homes, and our communities. So when you are sharing with us about these sustainability goals, how do we start educating ourselves in bite sizes so that we don't overwhelm ourselves, so that we can speak the language and communicate with someone like yourself who's so well versed?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how well versed I am, Anne-Marie. I think you're pretty eloquent in the way you're putting forward the questions. So thank you for that. It's a very important question that you're asking. And I just want to back up a little bit. And sorry for interrupting, your opening intro. What I was going to say is that, human security is a concept that bridges really well with something called the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Because out of human security, when we're looking at environmental sustainability, economic opportunity, gender rights, education, healthcare, these have all translated now into what we call the Sustainable Development Goals. And what are they? There are essentially 17 indicators of how we can make the world a better place. And that sounds really hokey, but it's not. What these 17 indicators are really, they're built around the idea that if we implement these by the year 2030, hence the term United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2030, we will really move, our global society forward in a way that does things like eradicate poverty, that brings the level of literacy up from where it is today, to eradicating illiteracy in the world, to creating vaccinations. And I know it's a very controversial topic, so I know there's going to be some detractors out there, but, looking at public health in a meaningful way. And it's very important in the current situation that we're facing. I think public health is now going to be on the minds of people everywhere. How do we deal with these kind of pandemics that we're facing, and is there a role that we can play in government and also the private sector to make a difference, right? So the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, as we call them for short, are now the new mantra, if you will, that's brought together the private sector with government. And both sides are talking about it. And for the first time, in a long time, in many, many years, we have both the private and public sectors working together to try and implement these goals. Now, it's a Herculean task because the estimate is that we need about $350 billion a year to implement goals by 2030. Yeah, wow. It's a really, really big task. But the good news is that the private sector wants to come on board, and we have to hold them to task, right? These large corporations who say they want to make a difference, we've got to hold them to task. So you were asking the question about what can we do? Sorry, go ahead.
Large corporations, not like a Johnson & Johnson or like.
Yeah, even a Johnson & Johnson. Yeah. So for a long time, for the last 30 years or so, large corporations have used something called corporate social responsibility to say that they want to make a difference in the community. And in many cases, they are doing some interesting and good work. But in many cases, there are some corporations that use it as a way, as a PR exercise to say, oh, look at what we're doing great things, but they don't actually make a difference, right? Now, what's interesting about the UN SDGs is that it actually puts some benchmarks in place to say, hey, private sector, corporation, or, medium-sized business, if you're gonna do something for the community, do something that makes a difference in these areas, right? And we're gonna hold you to account on that too. We're gonna measure your success, right? So that's pretty important. And I think that's a game changer in terms of where we're going. And we've now established a clear pathway of how we can do this. So earlier you were talking about what can we do to get the average Joe, to get the everyday person who may think of these things like, wow, this is really impossible for me to solve. What can we do to get them on board? What can we do to get them mobilized and get them interested in taking action? Well, the first thing is that we who are in government, we who are well-versed on these topics, have to stop talking, in fancy terms. It's keep it simple, stupid, right? That's the motto. We got to just keep it simple. We've got to break it down. Sorry, go ahead.
No, when they say, your explanation, a 5-year-old should be able to understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. A 5-year-old should be able to understand it. And it's not because we're dumb. It's just that you want to get people interested in this, right? You don't want people to, roll their eyes glaze over, and they just fall asleep. No, we don't want that. We want people to get interested and to take action. So what can we do? I think one of the most interesting ways of doing this is to just look around your community, look around your neighborhood. Are there ideas that you have, or are there challenges in the community that require action right now, today? And I think if we can try and have a conversation about that, even just amongst friends, hey, is there a recycling initiative in my neighborhood? What about, providing after-school programs? And yes, there are costs to all of these things, but if you start having the conversation, ideas will come on how to solve these challenges. And by the way, after-school programs for young people or recycling programs, these are all initiatives that fit within the UN SDGs.
There's 7 pillars to that, right?
There's 17 actually, and they range from 17, yes.
Did that change from our conversation like a year and a half ago?
No, so the 7 pillars we were talking about a year and a half ago have to do with happiness and well-being, and I'll talk about that in a little bit when we talk about the Happiness Matters project that I'm working on here in the UAE. But just to go back quickly to the 17 SDGs, they range anywhere from protecting underwater fish stocks to, protecting animals on land, to gender balance and gender equality, to environmental sustainability, to, economic equality. These are all issues that have been looked at and they have been determined to matter in making a difference in making the world a better place. So so there's 17 of them. And if you think of an initiative in your small community, I guarantee you it applies to the UN SDGs.
Yeah. You mentioned something before. I don't know if it was on the other recording, but well, in your local community, I always walk by, there's a center for children.
Yeah.
There's like a development center for kids. And every time I walk by there, I'm like, Anne-Marie, you need to go in there. There's something pulling me to go in there. And I feel like, talking to the young kids or to the young ladies, the young girls, maybe who don't have parents or who are lost. I feel like every little bit counts. And just as dropping or throwing a rock or a pebble into an ocean and creating a ripple effect, people think that they can't make a difference, but it's just about taking action. You're not responsible for changing the world, but you can be part of the movement to make it a better place.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. And, you were talking about going into a community center and talking to young girls. You did that. You recall, you came to the university that I was teaching at for a while, a Canadian university in Dubai, and you came and gave a speech about your experience in PR and the ethics around it and what it was like to work in that field. And I cannot tell you the impact it had. It was huge on these young minds, right? These young professionals who were just about to graduate and who were going to start off their careers in the same industry that you were working in. They all came to me and said, wow, that was a inspirational talk. We loved Anne-Marie's talk. And I cite the example, Anne-Marie, not because I want to congratulate you, but of course I do. It's a good example of impact, right? You're transferring knowledge, your experience to young people, and they in turn will carry that with them when they go into the work environment and the workforce, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that, with that one talk that you gave, you made a difference. It was impactful, right? Now imagine if we all did little things like that. It was just one event, but if we all do these little events, it makes a difference. Now let me add one more layer to this. What if you and 4 other of your friends who are working in the PR industry came together and started a collective workshop series on, the trials and tribulations of working in the PR industry, right? Working with a social conscience. You told me earlier that you've been certified through a social conscious course. Imagine if you could impart that knowledge now to young people who are just starting out in the industry. Hugely impactful, right? And it makes a difference, especially the young girls, right, who are going into the business. Huge impact.
Because I think that's where I always had an issue with PR when people wanted to say I was a publicist. I felt like there was such a negative connotation to that, and I was like, I don't do PR. I'm not a publicist. Not understanding back then that there were so many layers to PR, but more so. Really wanting to be a connector and an endorser and having that ability to open doors for people, but not wanting to sell something or create a facade about something that wasn't real. I wanted to be very authentic. And I don't know if you remember, I started that initiative a couple of years ago with conscious branding and really, looking at what are the brands, businesses, individuals I want to work with? Do they align with my value system? What is their goal? Is the project or idea that they're working on going to contribute to society, humanity at some capacity? So when I go a little deeper and we talk about that new certification or that training that I'll be doing, it's all on emotional intelligence, and it really goes down to the core. What truly makes you happy? What do you feel? And I think really understanding human beings and having an EQ in the workplace so that we can be a little bit more empathetic and people can enjoy their jobs a little bit more, because there's such a there's an unbalanced seesaw right now with, I don't like what I do, go find your passion and leave your job, or I got to work in this job because I have to make money. Well, why can't it be, I still have passions and dreams, but I also got to make my money, and I make my money and I show up to work and I enjoy what I do when I'm there. And then when I'm home, I get to work on the things that I'm, that drive me in for my own personal satisfaction. So
Right.
my question to you right now is, why, if we have these initiatives with the United Nations and government passes all these laws and all these things, why isn't there something that passes and promotes and educates on happiness and a like a training that people must do to be better?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. So there are, I don't know if they're systematized, and I don't know if they're offered by the government, but I can tell you a little bit about a project that we're working on here called Happiness Matters. And it relates directly to what you were talking about, particularly about, people working in their day jobs and then coming back and doing the things they love, right? So Happiness Matters is rooted in the science of positive psychology. And positive psychology is simply a branch of psychology that looks not at treating pathology, not at things like, somebody's depressed and we have to treat them, right? And sometimes it involves medication. No. Positive psychology looks at people who flourish. The most successful people who are happy, by any measurement scale. What is it that they're doing that makes them so successful, right? Is it an inner core strength that they have? Are they resilient? Do they display grit and determination to push through the hard times? So the science looks at that and tries to, tease out initiatives that an individual can do either with a psychologist or on their own through, right? That they can do to flourish, right? And we use the term flourish in the discipline of positive psychology, right? So the project that we're working on is called Happiness Matters. I work with a positive psychologist. She's an amazing researcher, published lots of papers here. And together we've come up with this project where we look at how you can bring these kind of concepts within private sector organizations, whether they're big or small. How do you then, and the idea is very simple, how do you get people who work in these projects to be motivated, to be empowered, and to want to, function and contribute to the overall success of the company, right? Now, the obvious benefits for the company is that you've got people who are much more motivated, they're more productive, there's less absenteeism, less sick days, because they all want to be there, right? But that takes a commitment from management of the company. They have to commit to saying, okay, you know what, we're going to do things differently. We're going to put in place things like work-life balance. We're going to allow you to telework from home. If you're a mother, we might offer free daycare. Yes, it's a cost, but the overall benefit is so impactful and powerful that we're willing to take that cost. They may even go as far as a company like Patagonia, where they go, you know what? Our products are going to be rooted in environmental sustainability. We're going to be a company that's socially conscious, and we're going to make a difference. Why? Because we've seen that it improves our profits, right? It's not because we're altruistic. It improves our profits, and it also gets the people who work for us motivated. And so we've taken that science, we've developed a program with a bunch of initiatives, and we're going into the private sector. We're starting here in the UAE, and we're going to try and go around the world. But the conversation we have is, there are three areas that we can work on. One is, how do you get your employees motivated? And the only way to do that is by putting in these processes and procedures to get your employees to love being in this company, right? The second, and I think most important part, is how do you develop products and services that are impactful from a well-being and happiness point of view? Can you develop products that are recyclable, that are protecting the environment? Can you teach people, through your services? Imagine a bank, right? You're going up to a teller and you're waiting in line. Now, I know many of us don't go to banks anymore. We just use online processes, right? But imagine if you have to go to a bank teller and you have to wait in line. That's dead time. What if a bank taught you about finances while you're waiting in line? That's an educational program that is being taught while you're waiting in line, so that it's not dead time. And you learn something, right? So that's a really interesting initiative that a bank could do very easily. That would be an impactful, and it would matter in terms of happiness.
Does this require a company to have an additional budget that they have to allocate towards this? Because I feel like that's where there may be some resistance.
Yeah, very good question. No, it doesn't. So what you can do is you can reallocate existing budgets. Everybody has a learning and development budget in most companies. I'm talking about medium to large companies. A small business not, but certainly medium and large companies where you will find most of the interest in this kind of programming. You can do it within existing budgets. If you're going to start to go do R&D on new kinds of products and services, that's a different matter. So you might have to dip into your
R&D?
You might have to dip into your R&D budget, to come up with new innovations.
What is R&D?
Sorry, research and development.
Thank you.
Forgive me.
I'm thinking about when I lived in Dubai. I always bring up the example with this particular company I worked with, and my chairman was like, Emery, I want you to create a training. I want you to train the staff and create a training manual as if they were to go to the Anne-Marie Inc. lifestyle school. And I broke it down into categories, and I felt like that was the most emotionally fulfilling thing that I had been doing. And to just know that I could train in different disciplines throughout marketing, PR, and branding, in addition to really having a one-on-one connection with the staff where there was just so much love and respect, because they felt between both of us, because there was believing and empowering them, making them feel important, and showing them that they could be at work and still see other opportunities for themselves. And I think that that's really important, that people don't feel like they are stuck. And I remember at the time I was writing for a health and wellness magazine, and there was a woman that said to me, I'd love for you to feature us. We do team building. And it did not resonate with me. They wanted us to do it at the company. And it was like, let's get everybody together. And they would do this. They'd bring the staff out to go have drinks or go do a potato bean bag sack thing. It did not flow for me. And I'd be like, I want to be stimulated. I want to know that there's transformation taking place. And I feel like that's happening right now. Like corporate well-being right now is taking on like a new, they're like, we're coming in hard right now. We're going to really make a difference.
Yeah. So exactly what you're saying. Absolutely. 100% right. If I can bring it back to our initial discussion.
Bringing it back is
one of the ways we can empower people who are working in organizations, whether they're large or medium or even small, is through volunteering. When we talk about socially conscious companies, one of the ways that you can empower people who work in these organizations is by giving them the time in their day, right? So they're not doing it on their personal time, but giving them the time during the day to volunteer on a project. Now, what better project to volunteer on than a project that's related to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? So if you'll just give me a second, I want to plug an organization which is called Impact 2030. Impact 2030 is a global organization that's affiliated to the United Nations. It's a non-governmental organization that's been endorsed by the UN, and their mandate is very simple. It's to create local community-based networks whereby companies can give time off, paid time off, to their employees to volunteer on projects that they come up with that will achieve one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, one or more in your community, right? So what you're doing, you're killing two birds with one stone. You're empowering an employee, you're making them more happy. Yeah. They're more tuned to well-being. They display the benefits of being of a well-being environment, and you're implementing the UN Sustainable Development Goals. How amazing is that, right? Now, you might say, okay, well, I don't even know where to begin. What is the project? Well, we had a conversation earlier about having a conversation with friends, going to an after-school program, talking to young girls about PR. There's a project. But you might say, well, how does that relate to the UN SDGs? It's in my own neighborhood. It's not global. Well, yes, it is. Because if you do something in your neighborhood, everybody's going to do something in their neighborhood. And hopefully that becomes a catalyst. And when you measure, when you take them all together, you have a global impact. You have a city impact, you have a community impact, and it makes a difference. So I just want to plug the website. It's www.impact2030.com. You can go to that website. You can join, you can get your company to join, you can tell it to your managers. If you own the business, you can sign up on behalf of your company and you can start a local chapter. And you can connect up with the organizers, the people who run the global headquarters in New York, and they will give you guidance. They're there as a support system, and they give you tips on projects that align with the UN SDGs, and you can take it from there, right? And there's no end to the possibilities of what you can achieve through collective action.
Right. And for us being responsible as individuals, because you started an agency, global communication agency based out in the Middle East. What kind of clients, what kind of projects are you working on?
Well, I talked about Happiness Matters before. So we work with private sector clients here in the region. They tend to be larger organizations, because the larger organizations so far are the ones that have and the ones who are most socially conscious are the ones who want to take up these kind of initiatives. So yeah, I would say, you know, they tend to be larger. And we're working with insurance companies. We're working with electric companies, you know, utilities. Interestingly enough, we're working with commodity companies as well.
Wow.
We're working with governments too. So that's interesting. But some of the other projects that I'm working on are around social impact investing. How do we get the private and the public sector to speak with one voice around making? So that's ongoing. I want to increase it. I want to bring more people on board to partner with us. So, you know, you can reach out to me. You can go on our website, www.agency, and you can send us a little note. We'd love to partner with you.
Yeah, I encourage you guys to follow Aziz. He's got so many great ideas and bringing so many things to life. And just like any impact in the world, anything that's made a true impact, it takes time to stew and to cook. And the more support that we have, the more conversations we have, the closer we are to bringing those beautiful ideas to life. And
right.
Do you have maybe this is a good one, actually. You have a quote, something inspirational that you'd like to leave us with that has to do with our current social climate and where we're going?
Wow, you're really putting me on the spot. I'm terrible at quotes, but let me leave you with this. I think we are often overwhelmed by our everyday lives. It's more so now, given, you know, the horrible situation that many of us find ourselves in, you know, with loved ones who are sick, being in self-isolation and in quarantine. But what I'd like to say is this, that, you know, every idea matters. If you have a passion about wanting to make a difference in the world, don't stop yourself. Reach out to your friends, reach out to your family, and do something local. Because the power of that local idea and that local initiative will resonate around the world, I can assure you. And if you reach out to organizations like Impact 2030, you then have a platform to really become, for that project, for your idea to become a catalyst. And no idea is too small, and collective action means everything. So don't think you don't matter. You matter, and you will make a huge difference. I guarantee it. So thank you.
I love that. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your message. I'm so happy to be connected again. I mean, I knew I'd see and speak to you again, but I have some projects I'm working on with Aziz that, again, will take some time to bring to life, but I never gave up on that idea. And I really believe that we'll do beautiful things together. So thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. You're amazing. And your ideas make a difference. And I can't wait to see them come to light and come to fruition. And anything I can do to help will be my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys. I'll send you all a message on the IG and on YouTube. You'll have access to Aziz and some information on what we talked about today. But I encourage you to become active because your ideas matter. Sending you a lot of love from Los Angeles. Good night, Dubai.
Good night, Los Angeles. Take care.
Bye-bye.